They say no altar is truly empty, that beneath every one lies the weight of something, bones, secrets, sacrifice. At the convent of Saint Arilda, the altar was heavier than most. Carved from a single block of black limestone, it had no cross, no relic, no inscription, only silence. Silence so dense that sound died near it. The sisters said it was sacred, untouchable. But silence, when fed long enough, begins to breathe. Welcome to Convent Nightmares, where prayer becomes possession and the holy turns hollow. If you're watching, keep your candles lit. Before we begin, subscribe, leave a like, and comment your city and country so she knows where to search next. Because tonight's story doesn't just haunt, it waits. She was called Isadora, the quiet one. Her vows were taken early, too early. They said she had a gift for silence, that she heard things others couldn't. The other sisters called it grace, the Mother Superior called it obedience. But behind her veil, Isadora wept at night, not from fear, but from knowing. She had seen what lay beneath the altar before it was sealed, and she had heard it whisper her name. One morning she vanished. No one spoke of it. No search was made. Only a strange prayer was added to morning mass, never translated, always sung softly. And when the youngest novice dared to ask where Isadora had gone, the Mother Superior replied, "She serves more deeply now." And still, every time they touched the altar, it hummed, as if something beneath it was breathing. The convent bell rang only twice that morning, though it was supposed to ring 3 times for lauds. The sisters paused in confusion, their steps faltering in the corridor. No one questioned it aloud. At Saint Arilda, questioning was discouraged. Instead, they walked in silence to the chapel, eyes lowered, hands folded, hearts tight. And yet every pair of eyes flickered once toward the altar as they passed, as if expecting it to move. It didn't, but something had changed. The black limestone was damp. No one spoke of it, not even the sacristan, but Sister Colette's hand trembled as she laid down the fresh linens across its surface. Her fingers came away stained, not red, not even brown, but a deep gray, thick like ink, and warm as breath. She wiped it on her robe and said nothing, but her eyes wouldn't meet anyone's for the rest of the day. That evening, the wind refused to enter the chapel. Candles sputtered, their flames bending inward, leaning toward the altar as if drawn by something beneath. Sister Jean tripped crossing the apse and scraped her palm against the stone. A drop of blood landed on the altar. The hum returned, barely audible, but felt in the ribs, and in that moment every candle flared. Mother Adeline called it nonsense. She ordered the sisters to fast, to meditate,
to cleanse the chapel of gossip and fear. But that night the chapel doors opened on their own, the wind entered, and the altar whispered a name no one had heard in years. Isadora. Sister Agnes, oldest among them, began to weep. She said she had heard it before. That same voice, that same name, the night Isadora disappeared. They locked the chapel, barred the doors with wood and salt. But in the morning the black stain had grown, spreading down the sides of the altar, reaching the floor. A trail now led to the front pew, and on the bench a single folded veil. It was Isadora's, still damp, still warm.
They burned the veil, wrapped it in white cloth, sprinkled holy water over it, and lit the flame with a candle from the Virgin's altar. It hissed, popped, cracked like dry skin. The smoke was black, clinging and thick. It didn't rise, it crawled, slid across the floor like something searching. Sister Colette vomited, Sister Agnes fainted. Mother Adeline stood still and stared into the smoke like it had spoken her name. That night the dreams began. Each sister, no matter how pious or defiant, saw the same thing, the chapel, empty and breathing, the altar cracked down the center like a mouth. From it emerged a hand, gray, wet, trembling, and then a face, pale, veiled, eyes sewn shut with rosary wire. Isadora. She did not speak. She only looked and wept. In the dream the walls bled scripture, but the words weren't holy. They were wrong, familiar but warped, like prayers recited backward by a mouth that had forgotten how to pray. Sister Jeanne woke screaming. Sister Rosalind awoke bleeding from her ears, and Mother Adeline did not sleep at all. She knelt before the altar until dawn, whispering the same line over and over. She was chosen. She was chosen. The next morning, Sister Agnes was gone. Her bed was still warm, her shoes at the door, but her habit was folded on the bench in the chapel, where the veil had been. And the altar had grown darker. Its surface pulsed faintly now, like a heartbeat or breath trapped under stone. Sister Colette swore she saw something beneath it, just for a second. A flicker, movement, an eye. She begged to leave, said she'd go to the bishop, said this was no longer holy ground. Mother Adeline struck her across the face and ordered a novena of silence, for penance, for peace. But there was no peace. That evening, the altar wept. Thick black tears bled from its base, pooling at its foot like oil. No one cleaned it. No one moved. The sisters stared, and then, slowly, as if drawn by a force none of them understood, each knelt, not to God, but to the altar. They didn't know why. They just did.
and in the silence, the stone sighed.
The sigh didn't end. It lingered, low and constant, like air moving through lungs too old to belong to anything living. The chapel walls vibrated with it, not violently, but persistently. The candles flickered in rhythm with the sound, their flames dancing to a breath that came from the stone itself. The sisters no longer spoke. Words failed them, not by choice, by surrender. Sister Jeanne scratched her arms until they bled, not from madness, from memory. She said the voice in her dreams had begun naming names, first Isadora, then Agnes, then her own. "She's praying in reverse," she whispered one night. "She's praying us into the altar." They didn't sleep anymore. They sat in vigil, their eyes hollow, watching the altar like it might move. And one night, it did. Not much, not enough for the untrained to see, but the sisters saw it, felt it, a single inch forward, as if it were crawling. They began finding things, small things, pieces. A toe beneath the pew, a rosary made of teeth hidden in a hymnal, a piece of scalp in the holy water font. Each discovery was met with silence, not out of ignorance, but reverence. Whatever was happening, it had gone beyond fear. They were inside it now, and it was sacred. Or something that had learned how to mimic sacredness. One morning, the chapel was full of fog, thick, white, glowing like sunrise, but there was no sun. The windows were dark, yet the fog was warm. Sister Rosalind said it smelled like baptism. Sister Jeanne said it smelled like bone. And Mother Adeline said nothing. Her mouth had been sewn shut during the night. No one had done it. No blood, no struggle. Just perfect stitches, rosary wire looping cleanly from lip to lip. She never fought it. She just nodded and pointed to the altar. That's when they heard the first knock. 3 dull thuds from inside the stone, and then the voice, clear and hollow. "One more." The altar spoke again the next night. No voice, no language, just a vibration that pulsed through the stone like a heartbeat. And then warmth, not from candles, from within. No one moved. They stood like statues, eyes glassed over, listening to something they couldn't name, but had already accepted. Mother Adeline hadn't spoken since her lips were sealed, yet her presence filled the chapel. She stood at the altar every dusk now, arms open, her silence louder than any sermon. The sisters began kneeling around her, heads bowed, chanting nothing. No words, just breath, synchronized, ritualized, as if something was teaching them how to worship again, but this time downward. The knock came again, louder, followed by a name, Colette.
Sister Colette didn't run. She stood, smiled, walked to the altar barefoot, and placed her hands flat against the stone. It shuddered, moaned, and opened, only slightly, just enough to let the light in. But there was no light, only blackness. And from that slit a hand reached up, gray, long, soaked in wax, and took hers. She didn't scream, she sang, softly, in Latin, a psalm that didn't exist. As the hand pulled her down, her eyes rolled back and her mouth filled with ash. The sisters didn't move, they didn't mourn, they kept singing, and when the altar sealed itself once more, they smiled. Now there were only 6 left, and the knocking returned.
By now, the altar was warm to the touch. Always. Even at night, even when the wind outside howled and frost rimmed the chapel windows, the stone pulsed with a steady heat like something alive beneath it. The remaining sisters no longer flinched when it whispered. They no longer asked who would be next. They understood. It wasn't punishment, it was invitation. Sister Rosalind was the one who began dressing in white, a shroud, not a habit. She painted ash across her eyelids and smeared oil over her hands. "She's ready," Jean said. "She knows the way." The others nodded. No arguments, no prayers, only silence. When Rosalind approached the altar, it opened wider this time. She stepped inside without hesitation. It closed behind her like a sigh. That same night, the fog returned, but it was different, colored, shifting, as if it held faces, mouths, some smiling, others open mid-scream. The chapel smelled like myrrh and rot. The candles flickered in a pattern, spelling nothing but feeling like meaning. And then the altar opened again, by itself. No name was spoken, no sister approached, but Mother Adeline stepped forward. She opened her arms, lifted her head, and her stitches came undone. Not torn, undone. Like someone invisible was unsewing her mouth with delicate hands. Her first word in days was a name no one had ever heard. Not Latin, not human. And then she climbed onto the altar and lay flat, her body offered like communion. The stone cracked beneath her, not deep, but enough. Blood spilled upward. The walls groaned, and somewhere beneath them, in the forgotten layers of the crypt, something answered. A 13th knock. The sisters knelt, the altar opened wide, and the chapel breathed in. They say the convent was abandoned after that night, that the bells stopped ringing and no one came to morning mass. The bishop sent men to investigate, but they never found the sisters. Only robes, folded in pews like offerings, and a chapel that hummed, faintly, like breath beneath the stone. The altar remained intact, whole, warm, watching.
No plants grow near St. Arilda now. Birds avoid its roof. But sometimes, on windless nights, pilgrims report hearing footsteps from inside the chapel, and the faint sound of singing, not joyful, not grieving, just hollow. And if you press your ear to the altar, they say you'll hear a heartbeat, and beneath that, weeping. This has been another descent into Convent Nightmares. If your candles are still lit and your hands haven't turned cold, leave a like, subscribe, and comment below your city and country so she knows where to look next. And remember, the altar is never empty. It simply waits for the next name.